Hey, this is Tamatonga, Bullet Club original OG triple OG triple, and you're listening to the Junkyard.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 6 of the Junkyard. Yeah, number 6. I can't believe we're here. Thank you for joining us on this next edition of the Junkyard. My name's Spencer Cantor, also known as number 11. Gentlemen, introduce yourself to the people.
I am Dennis Day Jr., otherwise known as DDJ, the host of What Do You Say with DDJ that drops every Monday at 12 a.m. on all major podcasting platforms, and part of the Pro Wrestling Junkies Pod Squad.
Cheap pop for DDJ.
Cheap pop.
Give people what they want.
You got to give the people what they want. And what the people want, gentlemen, is me. This is the one and only Jovanni to Hotty, also known as El Guapo to Hotty.
Yeah,
you love it.
You love it. Everybody loves it.
I like it. I love it. I want some more of it.
Oh my God. We're already starting off early off the rails with the singing. But guys, we have a jam-packed episode for you guys.
Yes, we do.
First off, we have an interview with the one, the only Chris Van Vliet, who was a former virtual markout guest. So great interview. Can't wait for you guys to hear that one. Then we go into our roundtable talking about greatest announcers, commentators, backstage interviewers. We get into some good debates there and some highly underrated people there. So check that one out. And then last, we end with a trip to class where I might have stumped these guys. So tune to find out. But before we get into the interview, I just want to go ahead and make sure everybody knows about all the bonus episodes we dropped last week. We did a lot of them. We did our AEW Winter is Coming review show. That was called the Paradigm Shift episode for appropriate reasons. And we talked about the impact that Kenny Omega's title win had on the industry and how he'll be on Impact tonight on Access TV. Make sure you guys, if you have Access TV, check that out, 8 p.m. Eastern. If not, go to their Twitch channel. And if not, check out Impact Plus tomorrow. And yes, I did mean that pun intended.
He meant the
Impact. Oh, my thunder. Didn't even get a chance to ask pun intended. Thanks, Spencer.
That's right. I ruined your fun. And then also check out our NXT War Games prediction show and our NXT War Games review show that are both going to be up on all major audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcast, and YouTube. And then would have been in the Facebook group, but that already happened because it's Tuesday now. So make sure you guys check those all out. We greatly appreciate that.
And shout out to Dozer for such good shoot from being able to do the predictions, which was our pre-war games kind of run through. So Dozer from such good shoot. If you guys don't know about that show, give them a listen. They're what we call our After Dark special for Pro Wrestling Junkies. Check them out on the Facebook page. They're worth a good listen.
Yes, they are.
Absolutely. And these two have been on such good shoot. I'll probably be on there eventually, but our schedules don't mix. So you might see the third host of the Junkyard on there eventually. And maybe if things work out, you guys might see us all together. But, you know, that's still being worked out, but we'll see. Could be like a little holiday special or something. But yeah. Guys, let's just get into it. Here is our interview with the one, the only, CVV, Chris Van Vliet.
Is there something swimming in the junkyard?
I don't know. I just saw somebody get out of the water there, and it looks like he's carrying... Wait, is that a big mouth Billy Bass?
Guys, don't worry. It's just 4-time Lower Great Lakes Emmy Award recipient, 2011 Cosmopolitan Magazine Bachelor of the Year, 2012 Broadcasters Hall of Fame Personality of the Year. He's covered the Grammys, Oscars, Cannes Film Festival, and the Toronto International Film Festival, and he's recently appeared in Talking Shop-A-Mania 2. He's an avid bass fisherman and is the owner of the outdoor brand Tungsten, And he has a silver plaque from YouTube. A former Pro Wrestling Junkies virtual markout guest, the host of the Chris Van Vliet Show, the one, the only, Chris Van Vliet.
Woo! What an intro. Thank you guys for having me on. Geez, that was great. Can you follow me around and just say that when I walk into the buildings? That'd be amazing.
Oh, you got it, man. Hey, how you doing tonight, Chris?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you guys for having me on.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. We really appreciate it.
That's my pleasure.
All right. I'm going to throw it over to my co-host, DDJ, and he's going to hit you with our first question.
So this is something I always like to ask on my own podcast, which you were kind enough to send me some feedback on, and for that I thank you. How did you discover professional wrestling, and who are some of your early favorites?
So I discovered it, I guess kind of by accident. So I was at my grandparents' house. They're big, in Canada, you grow up, you watch a lot of sports. Hockey's a big thing. When hockey wasn't on, or baseball or basketball, football wasn't on, wrestling would just be on a Saturday night. And I'm like, my grandpa wasn't like a huge wrestling fan, but wrestling would be on. So this is the late 80s. Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, but also, some of the kind of sillier characters, Repo Man and Sergeant Slaughter, Coco Beware. That was my first introduction to it. I wasn't like a mega fan at that time, but late 90s, the Attitude Era sucked me in like it sucked in millions and millions of other guys and girls all across the country, all across the world.
And then who are some of your early favorites besides, or they're just the guys you just mentioned?
No, you know what? Those weren't even my favorites. They were just people I remember. I like them now, but early favorites, The Rock for sure. The Rock still inspires me now,
Right.
The Rock, absolutely. I'm going to go with some obscure picks here because it's so easy to go, oh, yeah, Stone Cold and The Rock and Triple H. I did have a Triple H poster on the back of my bedroom door, which it's tough to explain when you have like a shirtless man in his underwear, and like your friends and that don't like wrestling come over. They're like, what's going on here? You have a sweaty man in his underwear on your door. Right. But I'm going to go with some obscure ones here. I was a really big fan of Sean Stasiak. I loved his work that he did in WCW. Sean the Star Stasiak, when he was signing the 8x10s and leaving on people. Then I feel like he went to WWE and got like just a raw deal. And I do not mean the pun not intended there.
Right.
He's got a totally raw deal. He went there and they're like, oh, you're a little crazy. You're Crazy-ack Stasiak. And like, come on, man. The guy looked like $1 million. Kid Cash, I was highly influenced by Kid Cash in ECW. I loved that he could hit the Hurricane Rana from anywhere. Yes. And I just like being able to see guys that could do stuff in the ring that other people couldn't do. So the Cruiserweight Hour on Nitro was had such a big place in my heart because they were doing stuff I'd never seen before. I would record those episodes of Nitro on my VCR and play them back frame by frame by frame. I'm like, oh, that's how you do a tilt the world head scissors. I had no idea.
All right. So you were talking about like using the VCR to kind of see the moves. I saw that you did some training back in the day, I think around 2003, did a few months of training, but then you kind of shifted towards the broadcasting side. Tell us a little bit about your experience training to be a wrestler. And then actually, right before we recorded this, I watched the video with you and Sean Spears and Tyler Breeze and Peyton Royce getting the chops. I got to know, how was that like?
So me having any sort of experience with wrestling actually dates back to me being a backyard wrestler, which, so many of us were. But I was a backyard wrestler in my hometown of Pickering, Ontario. I'm a 2-time HCW champion, Chris Sharp. That was how we spent the last 2 years or last 2 summers of my time in high school. Because, when you live in Canada, you've got like this tiny little window of like, the 8 days when it's not snowing in Canada. But right. So that was where it began. And me and a few of the other guys were like, when we're old enough and we have a car and we're 18, we're going to go to wrestling school. And I actually followed through on it. And one of my other friends followed through years later, but I followed through on it. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. That was my dream. I wanted to be in the ring. My goal was to be a WWE superstar.
Right.
And when I was going to college for communication studies and I was studying broadcasting, and it was my junior year, that summer I saved up enough money. I bought a car and I was like, I'm buying this car with one purpose and one purpose only. It's to drive myself to wrestling school. And I started going to wrestling school, and it was great. And I was literally learning the ropes and learning the bumps and, figuring it all out. And that was great for the summer. But then it came time to go back to school, and finish my degree. Right. And I had to figure out what was important to me. Was it applying all of my time and knowledge to my degree, this communication studies degree, or was it applying all of that same stuff to going to wrestling school? And I had to decide, was it school or wrestling school? And I just felt like I couldn't do both. I didn't want to half-ass it. So I decided wrestling would always be there, and I would, continue my studies and pursue my dream of being a broadcaster. And I knew that wrestling would always be there. I've been so fortunate to be able to dip my toe into that world as a ring announcer, and I've done obviously a lot of interviews. But I like that the two worlds are separate, but can also kind of mingle together when you need them to.
Right.
But with that said, I can take a bump. I probably could not have a match. No, I don't think so. But I have enough knowledge about it that I can see something and go, ooh, that would hurt. That would, when Jeff Hardy, well, I think everyone saw when Jeff Hardy did the swanton off the top rope and slammed his head on the stairs. I think all of us across the world went, that wasn't supposed to happen.
No, not at all. But I think for sure I think you had some basic skills. I think you can make it through a 2-3 minute match.
Ethan Page said, because Ethan Page does that thing every WrestleMania week. He goes, I want to have a match with you. And I'm like, no, you do not. This is not happening. He goes, no, I can definitely walk you through this. If you can take a few bumps, this match is going to be great. Because, Ethan Page is tremendously talented.
Right.
Yeah. He could literally make anyone look good. I'm like, I appreciate the sentiment. Thank you. But I don't think we can do this.
I don't know. I would love to see you and the Karate Guy go at it.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know. I could wrestle. Maybe I don't want to wrestle Ethan Page, but Karate Guy.
Maybe talking shop in Mania 3.
Yep.
Don't give them any ideas, please. Please.
So I got a question, and kind of piggybacking off what Spencer just asked. Who threw the hardest chop? Was it Sean Spears, Tyler Breeze, or was it Peyton Royce?
Well, thankfully, Peyton Royce didn't chop me, because that would have been the worst one, I think, for sure. The first chop that Breeze gave me was my soul left my body. Briefly. It came back into my body, but my soul left my body. and what was so ironic about it was right before he did it, he goes, hey, I'm not really much of a chopper. And then, pow! Oh, my God!
And that's so my next question is obviously you're pretty well known, in the wrestling community as the guy that interviews the wrestlers. And also, how did you go from interviewing wrestlers to movie stars? And was there really any kind of sort of transition you had to do between the two worlds?
So I got to say, it was kind of selfish how this happened to begin with. So I started my broadcasting career in 2005. I was a local news reporter for a very small station in Peterborough, Ontario, Bobby Roode's hometown. Peterborough, Ontario. And it was great. I was the one-man band is what they call it. I was writing, shooting, editing, reporting, doing it all. And kind of thought to myself, this is great, an incredible experience, but I want to do something that kind of can showcase my personality a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I applied for a job. Long story short, ended up getting a job at MTV2 Canada in Vancouver. I picked up my entire life, packed it into my 1995 Robin's Egg Blue Toyota Corolla, and drove 3,000 miles, 47 hours across the country to a brand new life on the West Coast. And while I was there, we were interviewing a lot of actors. We were interviewing a lot of musicians. And I said to my boss, I said, WWE's coming to town in the next few weeks. Do you think we could do an interview? And she was like, yeah, sure. We've interviewed wrestlers before. And I went, hold on. I can hang out with wrestlers at work and get paid? And this was where the whole thing began. And the very first interview I did was Bobby Lashley. I posted this last summer on my YouTube channel. It was my very first wrestling interview. He was the ECW champion at the time. So we're talking January 2007 is when I did this interview. And then from every TV job that I had after that, I just kind of carried this idea with me that I can talk to wrestlers at my job. Like, this is amazing. So to answer the other part of your question, is there anything that carries over? Absolutely. I mean, it's just a conversation amongst two people. But the thing that I love most about talking to wrestlers is, we're all wrestling fans here, right? All four of us on the conversation, everybody watching this, we're all wrestling fans. We're going to approach the conversation with a wrestler vastly differently than your traditional news anchor or TV host.
Right.
So I think they're used to going into a TV studio and they're like, oh, so Bobby Lashley is the Extreme Championship Wrestling champion. It's nice to have you here. And, they don't know much about it, and that's okay.
Right.
Not everybody's a wrestling fan, but when you are a wrestling fan, you're like, oh, I'm going to ask you stuff that you probably haven't been asked before, just because I want to know the answer to it. And that's really where the whole thing began.
Right. Well, it's a funny way to kind of segue, because I'm about to ask you something you may not get asked a lot.
Uh-oh. I set this up perfectly for you.
It was. I couldn't have asked for a better setup. So I'm a fisherman. At least I try to be. And as Spencer eloquently put the woo tungsten ad in there earlier.
Tungsten.
Woo. We see that you were a bass championship. I see you've done, 7 tournaments, placed in the top 10 twice, and caught what's the biggest one I have here on record of 159 pounder?
Oh my! So you must be looking at, was this BASS you're looking at?
Yes, it was.
Wow, we're going deep on this one. Jeez. Woo. Love it.
That's homework.
I love it. Yeah, you'd never think if you typed in my name in bass fishing, you would see all these statistics. But
yeah,
so I fell in love with bass fishing when I was 4 years old. Went to a neighbor's cottage about an hour and a half from where I lived in the Kawartha Lakes. And all the kids were a little bit older than me, and there was nothing that, they really had for me to do. So they just put a life jacket on me, gave me a fishing rod with a worm on it, stuck me out of the end of the dock, and was like, hey, we'll put him out there for a while. My dad was standing next to me watching me. We were like, this will keep him occupied for a little while. Caught my very first fish. It was a rock bass, and pun intended this time, I was hooked. And yeah, and that was it. Like and when I love something, if you haven't seen this with wrestling already or YouTube in general, when I love something and I'm passionate about something, I dive all the way into it. I do not check the temperature of the water. I do not check to see how deep the water is. I just dive in and I'm like, I'll figure it out.
Right.
And that's exactly what I did with bass fishing. And I started fishing my very first bass tournament when I was 14 years old. And it just kind of just snowballed from there. And the tournaments that you were just referencing there, they were what I would say are the bigger tournaments. Those were the Pro-Am tournaments. And I actually went from Canada to the United States to fish in those tournaments. They were a big deal to me. Like, some of these tournaments, I'm winning thousands of dollars. Like the winner of the tournament on the pro side gets like $50,000 or $60,000. The winner on the amateur side gets a boat worth $30,000. So yeah, it's a big deal. And it was something that was a very, very big part of my life for many years. And I was living in Florida for a while. I had a bass boat there, and I was fishing on Lake Okeechobee, which is one of the best bass fishing lakes in the entire world.
Yes.
And that's where the idea for this company that I have with my best friend, Aaron Anders, began. We just thought there'd be a better way to do this. And I don't want to get like too nerdy, but the way that weights were being made for fishing just wasn't awesome. And we found a better way. And I'm proud to say here we are 4 years later, and the company just keeps growing. And as we just learned earlier, it's fun to say, woo, tungsten.
Oh, yeah.
Woo! Exactly. So was the inspiration for the name the Nature Boy? It had to be.
Okay, so it's two parts, right? So number one, when you catch a big fish, the first thing you scream out, woo, yeah, So number one. And then number two is just, a little tip of the hat to my wrestling background and my fandom. We also wanted a cool brand. Like It really began with me and my business partners saying, if we put woo on a t-shirt, I should have worn one of those t-shirts. If we put woo on a t-shirt, like how cool would that be? And to this day, we've had that shirt designed for 4 years. I'll be at the gym, the grocery store, wherever, and just random people will be like, hey, woo. Woo. It's the weirdest thing. They have no idea what they're wooing about, but it's great.
Nice.
So So obviously, you're, again, I alluded to earlier, you're pretty well known in the wrestling community and stuff. Have you had that moment where you feel like you've made it? And if so, when did you have that moment?
Oh man, I don't think so. And I just feel like I'm just striving for more every single day. I've definitely had some cool moments, some moments where I go, man, I can't believe this is a thing. Like, there's moments when like a wrestler that you've looked up to your entire life texts you. Or when you were, like the fact that I've been backstage at different wrestling shows has been so cool to me.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what making it would look like to me. I just want to strive for more and more. I don't know if there is an end goal here. It's just progress every single day. But yeah, there's been really cool things. Like, I mean, I don't know if you guys know the story of how I met DDP, but I'll put it in kind of in a nutshell here for you. I checked into a hotel in Los Angeles and I'm like kind of unpacking my stuff, and someone's like trying to get into my room and I can hear them like trying to get into the door and they can't get in. Like, what? Like housekeeping, like must know that I just got here. Like they'll go away in a second. And this thing just is, and I hear this person so angry outside the door. I'm like, all right, I'll go tell this person like, hey, like you're in the wrong room. I look for the people and it's DDP. So I open the door. I'm like, you're in the wrong room, but I'm a huge fan. He's like, bro, I got to go to the bathroom so bad. I'm like, come on in. So moments like that. And then when he came out of the bathroom after washing his hands, I was like, I'd love to do an interview with you sometime. I have this YouTube channel. And he goes, let's do it right now, bro. Okay. And the fact that he gave us an hour of his time and then we hung out for an hour after that and he showed us DDP moves. I don't know if that's I made it moment, but that was a really cool thing. And then like 2 weeks later, I randomly got a phone call from him and I was not near my phone, so I couldn't take the call. And I listened to the voicemail and he was basically like, hey man, I was just talking to someone and your name came up and I just wanted to give you a call. And I was like, what? DDP was having a conversation and my name came up. So that was a very, very cool thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's something really cool. Like just if you have like somebody comes to your door, it's like a wrestler or anybody and just kind of interacts with you and then they like, oh, okay, they see your name, they call you. That's crazy. So that's really amazing to hear.
Well, beyond that, of all the people whose rooms he could have knocked on in that entire hotel,
right?
How many people would have known it was DDP?
Exactly.
Probably not a lot of people.
And that's what's so, I mean, I totally believe in like serendipity and like everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
That's a perfect example of that. I will never have that many stars align in one moment again in my entire life, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're going to move on to a segment here with Jovanni to Hotty. We like to call this the junk drawer. Take it away, Jovanni.
All right, for listeners of the Junkyard, y'all know the junk drawer is when we go into our door of junk and pull out random stuff being questions for our guests. So the first completely random junk drawer question will be, what is the weirdest way you've ever injured yourself?
Ooh, man. The weirdest. Wow. I wish I had like some story about like breaking my arm, thing, but I think now it's just like I slept weird and it's, I don't know, something like that.
Some kind of stiffness.
My hamstrings. This is so weird. This is the weirdest thing ever. My right hamstring gets very tight if I sleep the wrong way. I guess this is what happens when you get into your late 30s. This is a strange thing. I've only broken one. I guess I've broken two bones in my body, but I broke my. You can maybe see. I don't know if my camera will pick. No, we can't really see. A little bit. But this pinky is way bigger and swollen. This was a backyard wrestling accident, and I remember going to the doctor, and he's like, "You should probably put a splint on that. There's a hairline fracture." And I was amateur wrestling at the time, and I'm like, "Well, can I still wrestle if I got a splint on?" He's like, "Probably not." I'm like, "Then I probably don't need a splint."
Right.
It'll heal itself.
Yeah, it'll be all right.
Kinda did.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna roll back into the junk drawer and see here. Okay, here we go. What is something you get wrong almost every time you do it?
Oh my God. Life? What is something I get wrong almost every time I do it? Jeez. Oh my goodness. There's so many things. I feel like I've oh my gosh. I don't know where to begin with this. Feel like I should have prepped better for this one.
You can't prep for the junk drawer.
You can't do it for the drunk drawer. It's just random.
I would say this. I would love pizza so much. Oh, pizza, the best.
So good.
And then after, I eat 3/4 of a large pizza on a Friday night, I feel like I've got that completely wrong. And I go, did I really need to order this? Yeah.
You love pizza, but it doesn't love you back sometimes.
Especially the next day.
Jovanni, before you move on, Chris, I forgot. I know you were on the virtual market, and I couldn't remember this. Are you a pineapple on pizza guy or no?
No, hell no. That is a disgrace to pizza everywhere.
Well, I'm sorry. I like it.
Well, so it's been great hanging out with you guys, and we'll see you later.
Please, Spencer, that's the last time we let you cut in the junk drawer.
All right, what else you got?
Look, I'm not going to discriminate. If you like putting fruit on your pizza, fine. You and Lance Archer can have that.
That's fine.
Lance Archer is probably the only person I wouldn't give crap about that too, though, to be honest.
I only did because we were doing the interview virtually. If I was next to him, I'd be like, oh, yeah, pineapple pizza is amazing. I love it.
I just had some yesterday.
Yeah, I love it. Don't hurt me.
Oh, goodness. So going back into the drunk drawer for one last question. This is completely out there, but which words or phrases do you most often overuse?
I say, oh, man, way too much. Oh, man. Which now, if you watch any of my interviews, you'll go, oh, yeah, he does say that like way too much.
Yeah.
Chris Van Vliet drinking game. Oh, man.
Wow. 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 Those are definitely two. Yeah. Oh, man and wow. Oh, man that's my go-to. Should just make a shirt that says, oh, man. I've also I say, could it be a lot, kind of ironically, but also because I think it's kind of funny. Could it be?
Could it be?
Could it be?
We should have done that in the beginning. We should have been, could it be? No.
Could it be?
Oh,
it is.
I'm going to have to listen for those things now when I listen to you, man.
Yes.
You're going to hear a lot of, oh, man.
All right, Spencer, that is going to wrap up our junkyard. Thank you, Chris Van Vliet, for taking a trip into the mess jar that we call the junk drawer.
Man, I had to go deep on some of those. Jeez.
Yeah, good answers. Okay, got a few questions left for you. All right. So in the junkyard, we do a weekly roundtable, and we've done ones like the Four Horsemen, and we just recently did like favorite themes. The current one we have coming up with this episode that you're going to be on is like we're going to be talking about like the greatest announcers, commentators, interviewers. So I would like to know, like from your perspective as a broadcast journalist and working in the wrestling industry in that field, who are some of your favorites and why?
Mean Gene is the GOAT. So Mean Gene for sure, best backstage interviewer of all time. No one ever compares. No one will ever compare. And I probably will get a lot of heat for this. I'm a big Michael Cole fan. Could it be?
I love Michael Cole.
I think that Michael Cole is so underappreciated, and his job is thankless. Like what Michael Cole does, what any commentator does, their job is so thankless. But Michael Cole has been the voice of WWE for 23 years, 22 years now, 20 plus years. Yeah. And I love that Michael Cole took a very sports-like approach to it. I love that when the way Michael Cole calls it, like it's actually like it's real sports, like it's real action. And this is nothing against JR. JR's commentary was really good for that time, and it's evolved and changed. But I would get so annoyed when JR would say it was a 15-foot ladder, and I'm counting the rungs, and I'm like, each rung is 1 foot. So 1, 2. It's actually only a 12-foot ladder, and he's not 15 feet in the air. And it just like I like that Michael Cole called stuff as it was. And then if we're going to go with a ring announcer, Howard Finkel is the person that every ring announcer tries to be like.
Right.
Whether you're a male or female or whatever, he's the best. And I think that no one will ever do it like he did.
No, not at all.
One question I kind of have in regards to too, who was like your favorite duo on commentary?
Oh, that's a good one. And I'm gonna go with a really interesting pick here. Actually, I'm gonna go with a few interesting picks.
Please.
I thought that Mike Tenay and Don West on TNA so good.
Yes, they were.
Especially compared to what else was going on at that time. And Joey Styles and Joel Gertner on ECW late 90s was just such an incredible product of that time. And I was so used to Nitro and I was so used to Raw, and ECW didn't come on in Canada till very close to the end of ECW's run. And it was like just hearing Joey Styles' voice, hearing his excitement was unlike anything I had ever heard. And I was just so drawn. Oh my God, so drawn to that.
Yes.
The way he yelled "cat fight," like I just loved it all. And I think that, I don't know if this is true or not, but it certainly seems like Mauro Ranallo was maybe inspired, at least with his wrestling commentary, maybe inspired a little bit by that. Although Mauro, we just heard him, call the Tyson fight. And it's so interesting how differently he calls boxing from how he calls wrestling. And man, that is not an easy thing, because it's so easy as a broadcaster to just go, this is my lane, this is my gear, I'm going to do this whether you like it or not. And the fact that Mauro can go, this is boxing, this is wrestling, and they're two completely different sports, two completely different ways to call it. And I go, man, that's incredible.
Shout out to Mauro too. His hair looked real good on Saturday.
Yeah, man. He's rocked so many different hairstyles over these last handful of years.
All right. I got one more thing for you, Chris. So in your interviews, you always end with you want to ask your guests like 3 things you're grateful for. So I want to turn around on you. What are 3 things you're grateful for?
I love this. Thank you, Spencer. And this is something that's really changed my life. I started doing this about a year ago. I start every day and end every day by saying out loud the things that I'm grateful for. I'm very grateful for my parents. They're still together. They've been married for 46 years, and they show such an incredible example of what a relationship should be, and this great love. So my parents, for sure, they're always in my top 3. I'm grateful to be able to have conversations like this one. And thank you guys for having me on.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
The fact that someone wants to talk to me, it still blows my mind. So I'm grateful that we live in a time right now where we can all purchase microphones and webcams, and we can do this thing. I'm grateful that that's even a possibility. And I'm just grateful. My third thing is I'm just grateful to know that there's better stuff around the corner. I know 2020 has been a really tough time for a lot of people.
Right.
But I'm a big person that looks for the silver lining in everything. And, sure, 2020 has been rough and really rough for a lot of people. But I'm grateful knowing that better days are ahead and better times are ahead. And I'm grateful knowing that, to quote John Cena, we can control the controllable. I'm grateful knowing that we are the ones in control of our own destiny. And if you don't like how today is, make tomorrow better.
Wow, those were some really good words to end on. Chris, thank you so much for joining the Junkyard. This has been a blast, and time has just flown by.
This has gone by so fast. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to come on. Congratulations to you guys on what you've built. And
thank you.
Man, this is so cool. This is so cool that it's 2020 right now, and this is a possibility. Like, I love that.
Yep.
This was not a thing 10 years ago, and here we are now, and like, you can reach a literal endless amount of people through this awesome thing called the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So I want to give you a chance. Go ahead and plug away. I know you got a lot of them.
Oh, well, I think we should probably plug Woo Tungsten again if you like bass fishing, wootungsten.com. But no, I'm at Chris Van Vliet on all social media, and the Chris Van Vliet Show, wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, cool. Thank you again, Chris, for joining us tonight. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to our interview with Chris Van Vliet. Thank you again to Chris Van Vliet for joining us.
Thank you, Chris.
For a fantastic interview. You can follow him on all his social media platforms. watch the Chris Van Vliet show on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. We'll link all that stuff in the description. So thank you again. Great interview, and I can't wait till we get our next guy, but good interview tonight. All right. So,
real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just the analysis of how great that interview was. That 30 minutes only seemed like 5.
Yeah, it did. It flew by.
Yes.
Like I think if all things work out well, we might need to get them back on for a part 2.
Absolutely. I am always down for a little chat with CVV.
Junkies, let us know if you want to hear part 2 with CVV. See if we can make it happen.
I'm sure if there's a will, there's a way. But that leads us into, and if you listen to the Chris Van Vliet interview, we talked about our roundtable, and we're just going to get into that. So here is the start of our weekly roundtable. All right. So as you heard on the interview with Chris, we talked about greatest announcers, commentators, interviewers of all time. We got his thoughts and opinions on that. But now we're going to go into the discussion for ourselves. Now, wrestlers make up a very big, important part of the show. But then, as we talked about beforehand, there's commentators, announcers, interviewers. They help add atmosphere and direction to the show, because you can't just do it with the wrestlers and the referee. You got to have like the commentators, because if not, it would be dead over the air. Like, you're not going to hear it like when you're in an arena, but when you're at home on the TV, you need something good coming out through the airwaves, and the commentators put the wrestlers over, describe the moves. You got the color commentators, and then the ones that break down the moves and everything. So very important. Then you got your ring announcer, man, woman, doesn't matter. Anybody can do it. But it takes a special person, because you got to remember like all the facts, like their weight, their height, any special stats about them. So it does take a good bit of memory. So very important to have a good ring announcer. And then you got the backstage interviewer. Some of them sometimes just look like robots. They just read a script and they're like, okay, so what do you think of this? Put a microphone in their hand, talk, and they can be the most boring person. So just you need somebody with a good personality that will get over. But guys, I posed a question to y'all. What do you think makes, like, out of all 3 of those categories, and you can break them down, what makes a good commentator, interviewer, ring announcer, and then just kind of get into that?
Jovanni, you want me to go first?
Go ahead, DDJ. Start them off.
All right. So for me, all 3 those aforementioned positions, your ring announcer, your commentary team, as well as your backstage interviewer, all play a very vital role. Your ring announcer is kind of like your hype man. You know, they're the ones that's getting the crowd riled up. A lot of times they're the first one you see coming out to the ring when the show starts. And, you know, that's when the crowd starts popping, because they know the show's about ready to start. And a lot of times, you know, they're like, you know, you've got your loud voices and, you know, and just really just good sounding, you know, like, you know, let's have a good time. You guys ready to have a good time? And then they get right into it, and they're just all like, ladies and gentlemen, this following contest is scheduled for one fall. So they're basically one fall. And they're setting up, you know, they're introducing the guys, you know, they're kind of they're like the MC of the each match.
Right.
So so they're the ones that kind of get things started. Now your commentary team, I think if I had to pick one of these 3 positions that I would say is the most important, I think it's the commentary team, because they are telling they are the guys that are, you know, narrating the story that's being told in the ring. You know, you got your analyst who is, you know, calling the moves. You know, oh, what a Hurricane Rana by Rey Mysterio, or what a 5-star frog splash by Rob Van Dam. And then you got your color commentator that's giving all the background information. So, you know, they'll reference, you know, when these 2 fought before, you know, this is a rematch from 2 weeks ago on Monday Night Raw or something. They're the ones that are kind of painting the picture for the audience watching this at home. You know, I mean, a lot of times they're the ones that are kind of, like you said, they're narrating the story. They're filling in all the details. They're basically kind of giving everybody up to speed. Even if you're coming into a story midway through, a lot of times they can give a little bit of a background. Like, this is what led up to this. And then you have your backstage interviewers. They're kind of like like, you know, the courtside reporters in an NBA game or the sideline reporters in, in an NFL game, you know, or like in an NFL game, you know, usually going into halftime, they interview one of the coaches, like, Coach, what did you think of the first half? Blah, blah, blah. You know, you have someone come in, you know, you will use the late, great Mean Gene Okerlund, you know, after a match or even before a match, you know, they're like, come on in, you know, I got Hulk Hogan here, you know, and basically he's like, Hulk Hogan, what are you going to do to King Kong Bundy tonight? Well, let me tell you something, Mean Gene. And then basically he's the one that's kind of like setting up the story before they go out to the ring. And sometimes they're the ones that capture the emotion of the wrestlers after the match is over. You know, they get them right after, you know, they catch the glory of the winner. That's just the agony of the loser. So all three of those very vital roles in what goes on in a wrestling event.
Absolutely. Jovanni.
Man, DDJ just broke that down so eloquently. He went step by step by step. So what I'm going to do, since you guys already know and don't need to hear a recap.
Thank you, Jovanni.
I'm going to tell you guys, in my views, what each of them does. DDJ gave you a very good specific XYZ. This is what they do. I'm going to give you guys the flip side. I'm going to tell you what they really do. Your ring announcer, as DDJ said, is your hype man. But to me, the ring announcer is that first voice you hear at the events. So this has to be somebody whose voice, as soon as it hits, is instantaneously recognizable. Right. This is the person. This is, in essence, the first person that anyone is going to hear from your broadcast, even before the commentary team at times. So your ring announcer sets up everything. So think of the ring announcer as the guy who lays your train tracks. Now, your commentary team, the color analyst, your spot analyst, they work in tandem to give you a mix of what the sport aspect is and what the entertainment aspect is. Why is this happening and what move is going on? A good commentary team feeds off of each other. A great commentary team is a heel and a face commentator. You have one person on the team who's trying to get heat for somebody while the other one is trying to give the baby face the extra push.
Right.
When they work in tandem and it's harmonious, it's amazing. This is one of the most just influential spots of the whole broadcast, because you could have a great show, you could have a great opening, but if you don't have anybody invested into what's going on, no one's going to come back. Your commentary team gets that initial investment. So those train tracks that were set by your announcer, your commentary team is that train. Now, the unsung hero in the mix is the backstage interviewers. You can be an amazing talent. You can have the gift of gab. You can have the 5-star skills to do everything right. But unless your fan base sees that, it doesn't matter. And a good interviewer can pull those promo skills out of a good wrestler. You can see wrestlers and say, okay, we know this guy is all of them. He's a blue chipper, first round prospect. This is greatness. But if you have him there with somebody who's robotic, you're not going to get a good promo. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get that feeling you need. I'll go to one of the most unsung interviewers of his time in Michael Cole, him and The Rock. The Rock was great, but Michael Cole and The Rock together were even greater. So on this train tracks, that train, your backstage personality is going to be the guy putting the coal in that train, because he's giving the talent away to get themselves over.
Coal pun intended?
Coal pun intended.
That pun was actually intended, not the one I did earlier. But yeah, guys, you guys broke that down perfectly, better than I did for sure. Great descriptions. Okay, so we're going to kind of break this down a little bit. With the commentary team, there is usually has been like 2 men, but now more recently you see a lot more of like the 3-man teams, and I think maybe there might have been some 4-man teams too.
On occasion.
Right. Yep. So what are your thoughts about like the commentary teams and like the number of people on the team, and what is like the perfect number? Because there's kind of debate on that. Like, is it 2? Is it 3? Should it just be one person? Like, just kind of break that down. What are your thoughts and opinions on that?
Why don't you go first this time, Jovanni?
Oh, DDJ, you're too kind.
You wanted to go first last time, so I figured I'd return the favor, my friend.
Such a gentleman. Well, to me, Spencer, I think we all grew up with the two-man group.
Right.
So we kind of get stuck, and this is what a lot of wrestling fans do, man. We get stuck in the nostalgia. We get stuck in what we know. So that two-man group is what we want to see. Let me make a case for the three-man group, because I am a fan of the three-man group if done right. You can't have a three-man group with two color commentators and one action guy. You can't have it with two action guys and one color commentator. You have to have an even mix. There has to be one, and a guy who can do both. It needs to be to where they're not butting heads with each other. You don't want somebody here yelling out a move name and the other one's telling you why he hit it and how amazing it is. It's just going to sound like a wreck, and they're going to hit it. They're going to butt heads way too much. Mm-hmm. So the three-man group can work. I'm a fan of it personally when done right, if they know what their cues are and they can work harmoniously. I think a lot of people just need to give it a little bit more of a chance than what they do, because I understand the aspect of loving the two-man group, but the three-man group is awesome when given a chance.
For me, yeah, I think Jovanni nailed it perfectly when he talked about, a lot us being stuck with nostalgia. And I think that's a lot of times due because, that's what we grew up on. And it's just overall, it brought just so much more joy to us than most of the current product seems to do these days. Yep. But in terms of my preference, I agree with Jovanni when he says the three-man booth, when done properly, is great. Mm-hmm. I'll just throw out the three-man team on AEW Dynamite. I think they work great together. Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, and Excalibur. I mean, you got Jim Ross that is, is kind of like your story guy. You got Schiavone, who's like more of like your play-by-play guy, and then you got Excalibur that kind of fills in the holes, and he's more like, I guess you could say like the historical guy because, he has that, knowledge of a lot of the wrestlers because, back when he was actually wrestling and even in doing his commentary and, like PWG and stuff, he knows a lot of the history of these guys, like, the Young Bucks, and all these guys. So I think those three work great together. And that is the prime example of a good three-man commentary booth. Right. I like the two because a lot of times, both guys have a clearly defined role as to what they're supposed to do. You're looking at like Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler. You're looking at, Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura, Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura, Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan. I mean, heck, even in their time in WCW, I thought Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone worked great together, even though they were both technically like babyface commentators and stuff. But I mean, it's just, it's my own preference. But again, like I said, Jovanni made a really good point. When done right, that three-man commentary booth is pretty well. I also think another really good three-man commentary booth, I think, is what we see on NXT with Wade Barrett, Vic Joseph, and Beth Phoenix. I think those three work really well together. I love the dynamic especially between Wade Barrett and Vic Joseph. And Vic Joseph's someone who I think should get a lot more credit than he deserves because he's really stepped up his game.
You know what? I'm going to highlight that team too, DDJ, because in the beginning when Beth Phoenix was announcing, it kind of felt like she wasn't really either contributing enough or it just kind of felt like she didn't fit in with the product when she started. Mm-hmm. Now with Wade Barrett, I love Barrett being there too because he brings kind of like a sense of realness, if that's even a thing, because he was at that top tier, right? Mm-hmm. And it kind of, all three of them, like you said, it's an amazing job they do down in NXT. A lot of times a match can fall flat, but the commentary will bring you back and at least keep you interested in it. And I think that team is slightly underrated with their ability to do that.
Prime example, I'm going to go back a couple weeks to when Leon Ruff won the North American title.
Oh, God.
Not so much. I wasn't doing this to antagonize you, although that's just a little extra bonus. But no, I mean, just like I said, one of the things I really liked about that moment was the way Vic Joseph and Wade Barrett called it. Like, you felt the genuine shock and like surprise when Leon Ruff won the belt. And like I said, I think that's one of the reasons why I liked that moment so much, was because of the great job those two guys did on commentary. Beth Phoenix as well too, but just for me, man, it was just really Wade Barrett and Vic Joseph put that moment over the top.
Now, how good would it have been had they actually not know he was going to go over and they were legitimately surprised too? Like, the whole reason they legitimately popped is because they didn't know it was going to happen, and that kind of gave us that moment. And I think I've been already on record plenty of times saying that was the worst move that NXT has done in a while, but I'll leave that alone.
One of the things too, I just want to kind of contribute. This isn't like meant to plug my podcast, which will be dropping every Monday, but yeah. But no, the gentleman who I have on that will have been on my podcast that drops the Monday, the day before this drops. His name is Steve Aaron, and he did commentary for the Chicagoland Championship Wrestling show that myself, along with fellow pro wrestling junkie Brad Marcus, went to back in October. And one of the questions I asked him is, does he prefer not knowing what the outcome is versus knowing the outcome when prepping for a match? And right. He basically put it a really good way, and I agreed with him 100%. He said he'd rather not know, and it's because when you see that result actually happen, you get that genuine emotion and reaction, whereas something that's manufactured because, they knew it was going to happen, I got to act this way. So I think that's the best thing to do. So
right, and I think on the Taker documentary I was watching, because they released all those before the final farewell, and there was one, I'm pretty sure that Taker was talking, and he goes, Vince came up to him for WrestleMania, and he asked him, do you want to know the finish? And Vince is like, no, I want to be surprised. And they goes, no, yeah, well, tell me. So it's kind of, that feeling of when you don't know and it happens, you get that genuine reaction. And I think that brings a lot of realness to the commentators, because you'll have people who, not to start with our favorites or nothing yet, but like for me, whenever Styles didn't know something big was coming, you get oh my God. Yes. I lost it because it was just like, that's what I just said too.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely to go back, and then I'll go into what Jovan and you guys just started talking about. I grew up on the 2-man team, and then I fell out of wrestling, and then they started doing the 3-man team when I came back. Kind of wasn't used to it at first, but that's basically the norm now. You see, like, almost every major promotion has a 3-man team. I think Impact and maybe ROH are the only ones that are kind of lagging behind that. But for the most part, everybody's used to the 3-man team, and sometimes there are little hiccups. For the most part, they usually find a good balance between that. And then in terms of like the commentary team, like when they don't know whenever something's going to happen, you can genuinely feel that across the screen. Like, there's moments that the commentators react at when, like, WWE, like Vince, or when AEW, Tony, or whatever other promotion, because usually they have like an earpiece or something with somebody shouting in their ear. And when they don't know, you get a genuine reaction, and it comes across the screen. Mm-hmm. So that's something I definitely really appreciate. Like, I know some people, like, they want to know what happens, but I like the more genuine reactions. Like when, like, Morrow was in NXT and then like something crazy happened. I bet you they didn't tell him about half things that happened. He's like, Mamma Mia, I love oh God, Morrow was great. But yeah, so let's go ahead, since we're still talking about commentators before we move on to the other two groups. Go ahead and start talking about your favorite commentators, maybe some underrated commentary teams.
For me, the benchmark and the 2-man team that is at the top of my like, mountain or whatever you want to call it. To me, there's no duo that was better than Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan. I mean, it's not only just in their commentary. If you ever watched like the Coliseum videos that they would put out, a lot of times they would do a lot of things. Like I think the one they did for right around, I think it was like WrestleMania 4 when they were in Atlantic City, they had, Heenan and Monsoon going through the casinos. There was another one where I think they were like doing a film, like a Western type film, or like that was a thing, and it was like, Bobby Heenan was like trying to get in the movie or something like that. Those two just played so well off each other, and you could tell like on the commentary. I mean, like I said, when we talked about when we did our Horseman roundtable a couple weeks ago, we talked about our favorite Ric Flair matches, and one of the ones I brought up was the 1992 Rumble, and one of the reasons why was the commentary that Monsoon and Heenan provided for that match. Yep. And I said that that's like my favorite piece of commentary of all time, and it's just because they played off each other so well. Like Bobby Heenan was so upset when Flair came out at number 3, and Monsoon was just egging him on throughout the night. Another like thing Monsoon Heenan moment I really liked. It was actually a couple months after that at WrestleMania 8, the beginning of the match. They're at near the top of the Sky Dome. And you see Bobby Heenan looking around, and Gorilla Monsoon's trying to do the intro, and he goes to Bobby Heenan's like, "What are you doing?" And Heenan's like yelling, "I'm trying to find the centerfolds that Ric Flair was talking about." And it's just they played so well together, and it's just. You could tell they had so much fun together, and there was just so much love and respect between those two. I mean, when Bobby Heenan left the WWE, his very last moment was on the Monday Night Raw when he got thrown out of the building by Gorilla Monsoon. Yep. And you saw Heenan walking away, and you could tell he was sad. And then, when it came down to when Gorilla Monsoon passed away, Bobby Heenan came on, and just I don't know if you guys ever saw the tribute that he gave like at the beginning of the show, and it was just so moving. And then even in his when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame, his acceptance speech, I think one of the last things he said was, "I wish Monsoon was here to see this."
Yes.
So, I also think someone that doesn't get enough love but really should, because a lot of times he did it on his own week in and week out, and that is Joey Styles, which was alluded to. I mean, yeah, he is just amazing. I mean, he did it all. He called the moves. He gave the history. He reacted, with the, "Oh my God."
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, come on. You got to give it a little better than that.
Okay, hold on a second. let me take a drink here real quick.
Gotta get lubricated.
Not that kind of lubricated. All right, here we go. Oh my God.
Nice.
But like,
that was better.
Props to him. And then another duo that I think is very vastly underrated, and that's the team that does a lot of the shows for Ring of Honor, and that's like Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman. I think those two are awesome together, and Ian Riccaboni's another guy who I think gets a lot less love than he should.
Right. Okay. Jovan, what you thinking on this?
Well, let's see. Top of all time. It's hard to not go with Gorilla Monsoon in there. And Bobby the Brain Heenan may have been the best heel announcer of all time currently, because I think there is somebody else that may be able to fulfill that role once they become a full-time announcer. But we can get into that in a little bit.
Ooh.
I think I know who you might be referring to.
But I think my best team, and it's just for the nostalgia, just because of the way they've called all the matches that I loved, would have to be JR and the King.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way they played off of each other, with JR being so by the book, this and this, and he's beating them, and he's tougher than a $2 steak. And King with just the out of the world, just puppies.
Yep.
And you never knew what King was going to say. And I think that kind of.
When the Divas came out.
Especially when the Divas came out. Oh, God, I'm getting hot here, JR. But to me, those two, it was the stark contrast. And I think that's what makes a good team.
Right.
Is you both can't have the same shtick. And those two were as far away opposites as you could have. Mind you, one of them is a legitimate wrestling, not just Hall of Famer, not all-star, not legend, but this dude is a phenom in his own right, and that is Jerry the King Lawler.
Mm-hmm.
And you pair him with good old JR, and man, they were a match made in heaven.
Absolutely.
Underrated. I go back and forth with this, and I don't know if it's underrated because a lot of people just crapped on it. And you'll probably be able to tell where I kind of go with some of my answers a little further on. But Michael Cole and that SmackDown group from, I want to say like the 05 era, that time frame.
Talking about Taz?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. That was actually, if you didn't, that didn't get brought up, I was going to just briefly mention them. But yeah, Michael Cole and Taz.
Michael Cole and Taz. I think it's Taz's roughness, even though he wasn't at where he's at now. Taz now on commentary, amazing. But back then he was breaking in, but he had that rawness that was good then. Like, it still felt very real that Taz could still jump in there and go, which I guess now that we've seen him, what he did to Cody, he could still go now.
Yeah.
But I think Taz brought that to that team where Michael Cole had literally came through the ranks. You saw Michael Cole start at the bottom, get to where he was. So that established a little bit of faith into Michael Cole.
Right.
So you pair him with Taz, who's coming off of being an active wrestler, and they just, to me, were amazing. And I think some of my favorite little sound bites would have to be Taz with the "Cole, you idiot," but it was so good. As far as underrated, I think they often get underlooked, maybe because of how green Taz was, but I think they did a hell of a job together.
Yeah, okay.
I want to give one more little mini shout out.
Yeah, go ahead.
To the announcing team in AEW.
Mm-hmm.
I think the product is where it is right now, 2 years in, where we are just going to the moon. To the moon!
To the moon!
And a large part of that is due to the commentary team. Jovanni, JR, Excalibur, all three of them really get you entertained. They get you hooked onto the matches. They make each match feel big. I don't think I've heard a match that they've done yet where I was like, oh, you know what? They really melded in. No. Every match that they have called so far has always had a big fight feel, even if it's local jobber getting squashed. They at least get that, he's getting in some good offense here. You have that feeling like, well, maybe he could do it. He's not going to, but they give you that feeling. And I think they're worth an honorable mention, even though they're just now coming together.
Right, definitely. I think my favorite of all time, kind of just hearing what you guys said, I'm going to stick with what Jovan said, and I got to go with JR and the King. That's a classic. That's what I grew up on. That's a lot of, I think a lot of people grew up on that one. You hear so many famous calls on that one. I know Bobby the Brain Heenan and Monsoon are probably considered, if you think about like the best overall, but just as a personal preference, I got to go those two. And then JR is still doing a great job. He might have a few slip ups here and there on commentary in AEW, but he can still go. And I think he'll be around for, a few more years until they need to shuffle that team around. But for now, it works. Definitely want to give as you heard in our interview with Chris, his underrated team, and I kind of want to go with this one too. That's Don West and Mike Tenay from TNA.
Yes.
They did a great job. Honestly, like I knew with watching WWE like 2007, 2008, and then I finally discovered Impact, and I heard them, and they were great. They really added to the matches. Like the matches were great, but those two really. There was a great dynamic between them. And then there was I think Don West, he might have turned heel. And then if you've seen any of our Don West promos he's done recently, he is a hype man, to say the least. And then Tenay puts over all the moves for sure. So definitely want to give a shout out to them. And then give a shout out.
Let's just real quick. You mentioned Don West. He's not like that just in commentary. If you ever seen him work a merch stand, say at StarCast or an Impact show, he is out there. And that's because he used to do those, the sports cards on the Home Shopping Network. So that's in his blood. But man, that guy is one of those guys that could sell ice cream to an Eskimo.
Yeah, For sure. And then I want to give a shout out to just Michael Cole, man. He has been a constant in the business ever since like the early 2000s, starting as a backstage interviewer, moving to a commentator, and then now he's like the main commentator on SmackDown now, like he was Raw and SmackDown now. But he is a constant professional. He has a bigger role behind the scenes for sure. But yeah, shout out to Michael Cole, man. I mean, some of his calls are kind of questionable. Like we could draw back to the one at WrestleMania 32 where Shane jumps off and off the Hell in the Cell, and you can clearly see him reading the script. He's like, "Oh my God, Shane!" I don't remember the exact call, and if you guys do, go ahead.
I
remember it?
I don't think so either.
Okay, it was like, "Oh my God, he's dead," or Shane goes through and now I'm like calling back to like JR. So that's like one time. And that's not really a Michael Cole. It's because they have so much to try to remember and everything. Yeah. But yeah, he just does a great job. And then the team like him and Corey Graves, they do a good job too. Like Corey Graves, he was a good wrestler, but I think he will go down as a better commentator when his career is said and done.
That is a possibility.
Right. Okay, so I think we've exhausted the commentator section for now. Let's move on to the ring announcer. Nothing really to debate on that one. Just kind of want to know where you guys land on who might be like your favorite of all time there.
I think, and I would not be surprised if we all agree on who we think is the greatest, because in my opinion, there are all these guys and there's just one that clearly stands head and shoulders above the rest, and that is Howard Finkel.
Rest in peace.
Yes. I mean, that guy was, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was the very first person hired by Vince McMahon. So he was literally there day one. And he was there for all the big moments. He was there, I believe, when the Iron Sheik beat Bob Backlund. Yep. He was in the ring when Hulk Hogan won the title. He's been the first, I don't remember, like 15 WrestleManias, 16 WrestleManias, something like that. Like much like you mentioned about Michael Cole earlier, he had a lot of, behind the scenes responsibilities as well. But there was just something about his voice that was just like, ladies and gentlemen, just doing the intro and stuff. And then also too, like anytime someone won a championship, the winner of the match and new, World Wrestling Federation champion and new, tag. It's just, man, it's just, to me, he is when it comes to ring announcers, there are a lot of people that are nipping at the throne, but there's only one sitting on the throne, and that is Howard Finkel. One guy that I want to give a shout out to, who I think is extremely underrated, and I'm going to go back to Ring of Honor again, Bobby Cruz. That guy, man, what a voice. I mean, he does just as I think he's honestly the Howard Finkel of Ring of Honor, because he has that same type of voice. He has that same type of vibe. And I mean, the same thing, his and new, and it's just, he's just got a really deep voice and he can go. So yeah, so I'd say, like I said, I got Howard Finkel as my GOAT. And then in terms of like guys that don't get a lot of love, that should get more attention, I'm going to go with Bobby Cruz from Ring of Honor.
Nice. DDJ, this is the easy one because everybody knows who number one is. So we're just going to have to say basically who number two is. But let me seal it down. We'll make it guaranteed fact. Fink is one. There is no way that you can convince me otherwise. And to make that fact even more hit home with you guys, if you watch the greatest wrestling match ever at Backlash between Edge and Randy Orton, that was Howard Finkel's introductions. And when I heard it, I almost cried because it just put me back into the time that I've heard him announce those guys at the first time I've ever heard it. And knowing that we had already lost him, that was just something very special. So, once again, R.I.P. Fink. He was an amazing announcer. He just, kind of like what I said with the good announcing team, when they kind of make you feel like you're in the moment. Fink always made everything feel like a big fight. Kind of akin to how Michael Buffer's Let's Get Ready to Rumble lets you know that you're about to see a championship match. Fink's announcements, Fink's ring calls for title matches made you have that same emotion. You're about to see a big fight.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly, number one GOAT, Mr. Howard Finkel. Thank you for everything you did for the industry, brother.
Absolutely.
Number two for me. And I don't know if it's because I've met this gentleman and he was cool as ice. I've seen him give his own tie off of his neck to a fan because they were joking around that he wouldn't, and he was like, you know what? I'm gonna take off this expensive tie and just throw it at somebody. And that's gonna be Mr. Justin Roberts.
Okay.
Yes.
Justin Roberts, I've had the pleasure of meeting at least twice. I've had, I think, 4 or 5 photos with them. And if you need one call to hear to kind of see why this guy's getting up there, listen to a John Moxley introduction.
Or John Cena.
John Cena also. There's just something for Johns. John, he kills it.
A really good Jeff Hardy one as well too. Wasn't he really big on Jeff Hardy introductions?
I think so. You know what? If he does your introduction and he really gets into it, it's gonna be gold.
Yep. So,
yeah.
Real quick, since we're throwing out not this kind, but a number, we're throwing out our number twos. I'm gonna for my number two. And this is, I guess, if I also had to say another underrated guy, but this is my personal number two, and that's Gary Michael Capetta.
Nobody wants to smell your number two, DDJ.
What's that?
Nobody wants to smell your number two.
Nobody wants to smell what DDJ is cooking.
No, you don't want to do that. I'm not going to lie. but no, I think Gary Michael Capetta for like the late. I know he did some, I think, way back in the early days of the WWF, and that I think he did like a lot of times when they were in the Philadelphia area. He did the ring announcing for that. But for me, man, when I started watching WCW, when I first got introduced, that was like the early 90s. It was Gary Michael Capetta. I mean, I thought he just, he brought something unique to that, role for WCW, and it's just, he's got a really great voice. And yeah, so I would say that's like, if I had to pick my second favorite, he would be number two.
All right. Well, I think we're all going to be unanimous on this. I think the Fink has to be number one. He's the voice you think about when you think about a ring announcer. There's no debating that, so I'm not even going to waste your time on that. I think my number two, I'm going to go with Eden Styles. Joking. If you know who that is, you're a good deep wrestling fan there. But I'm going to go with Jovan in this one. I think Justin Roberts is the number two. There is a reason AEW, they could have had anybody, but they brought Justin Roberts in to be their ring announcer because they realize that he's talented. This man got choked out by Daniel Bryan back in his segment, I think in 2010.
Yep,
he's willing to
Asian.
Right. He's willing to put his body on the line for an angle. So, I mean, that has nothing to do with his ring announcing, but that's just like, hey, he's willing to do anything for the business. But I love whenever he does the Jan, it's great. I mean, we're still going to hear that, but we're not going to hear AEW World Champion because, it's now on Kenny Omega. But, he does a great job. I think nobody will pass the Fink, but I think when his career is all said and done, he could easily be a number two for sure.
Yes.
Okay, so that is ring announcers. We have one more category to talk about, and that is the backstage interviewer, the most unsung hero of the broadcast. Now, like, there have been many great ones, and I think this one might be a unanimous again for backstage interview. It would be interesting to see where you guys go with it, but I think if it's going the way I think it's going to be unanimous. So I'm more interested to hear your number twos and kind of underrated. So Jovan, let's lead off with you this time.
I'm going to start it off because I don't think I have the same one as you guys.
Okay, go ahead.
My favorite number one backstage interviewer of all time is Michael Cole.
Oh,
Michael Cole's interactions with The Rock. And this is the thing. I know a lot of people want their interviewers to be into the segment. They don't want them to be robotic.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want them to crack or break kayfabe. But damn it, when The Rock was able to get Michael Cole to break and he's laughing, I'm dying at home.
Right.
And we already knew that The Rock was over. But as soon as you paired him and Michael Cole in the back, it seems like his greatest interviews are always with Michael Cole, to the point to where he said, here, throw the Rock shirt over your face, hold the microphone while The Rock talks to the millions
and millions
of The Rock's fans. So, of course, Michael Cole did nothing more than hold a shirt on his head and hold the mic. But then you've had other instances where Michael Cole is asking The Rock a question. The Rock goes, what? And Michael Cole, it doesn't matter. So that whole interaction with them two, for me, put Michael Cole in a whole nother echelon. And I think my love for Michael Cole, you know, like I said, he paid his dues all the way out from being real young on SmackDown to doing commentary now. My number one has to be Michael Cole, just because of the way he had great interactions with the guys in the back.
Okay.
He's come a long way from getting wedgies from DX.
Yes.
All right. So who's your number two, Jovan?
Number two would have to be Ooh, this is hard. Because I want to go with the one that I think you guys are going to go with number one, so I'll do it. Number two's got to be Mean Gene Okerlund.
Yeah.
Okay.
Simply for the fact why he's below Michael Cole for me is Mean Gene. If you look at the time frame, Mean Gene had killers, people that didn't really need a lot of his input. He helped in a lot of segments, but people who didn't really need him to be there, like I think Michael Cole kind of needed to bring that out of some of them. Mean Gene got lucky because there was people that just had charisma out the back end when he was doing it. But my two is Mean Gene.
Jovanni, do you have anyone that you feel is, because I'm going to throw this out there as well too, do you have anyone that you feel is like underrated?
Underrated. Mike Tenay as the backstage interviewer, when they had him doing commentary, doing backstage. I don't know why. When you guys were talking about the announce teams, I just love how everybody gave Mike Tenay shit. I could I could just watch it all day long. So I'll go with underrated being Mike Tenay.
All right, cool.
All right, Dennis.
So obviously my number one is Mean Gene Okerlund.
Right.
I mean, that guy just exuded, personality. And I'm so mad. I was supposed to go to a show a few years ago that he was actually doing an autograph signing at, and unfortunately I couldn't get off work to go. Thankfully, a friend of mine was able to get a personalized photo for me, an autograph for me. So I had that and stuff. But I mean, just again, he benefited from having a lot of great personalities, like to interview, like Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Ric Flair, all those guys. The life could go on. But he was also unique enough to, when he saw an opportunity to make a moment, that maybe to ad lib or to make a moment that maybe nobody else would have picked up on. Like, I'm going to use a couple of prime examples. I believe this ended up being an outtake, but I think it was SummerSlam 1989. I believe he was going to interview Ravishing Rick Rude, and that's when the SummerSlam sign fell.
Yes. And
he just, lost it and stuff. I believe if you watch it on the network, that's not there, but if you go on YouTube, you can find that video.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other one, and again, I'm going to bring this match up again. The aftermath of the 1992 Royal Rumble, when he's sitting there interviewing Ric Flair, with Mr. Perfect and Bobby Heenan. This is after Ric Flair had just won the WWF title. He's talking to all of them, and all of a sudden he's like, "Put that cigarette out." Yeah, I mean, it's just the uncanny ability to just, just on the fly, just put something like that, and just add that much more to the interview. I don't think there's anybody else that could, do that. My number 2, I'm gonna go with Sean Mooney.
Nice.
A lot of times, back in the late 80s, early 90s, he was the guy backstage. Like, he was the backstage interviewer. I mean, he always just said, sitting in front of that, what I used to actually think was the locker room, but I think now we know, like like a pull down screen or something like that. But then again, 10-year-old me didn't know any better at the time. But, well, sometimes 40-year-old me doesn't know the better. But I mean, I just love the way he was. He was really straight laced, and he asked the tough questions. And I just thought, real classy guy. Had the privilege of meeting him. He's just as cool a person in person as he comes off on TV. So he's my number 2. A guy that I think is extremely underrated that comes to backstage interviewers. He's also very underrated and underappreciated in terms of behind the scenes stuff right now. And and that's Jeremy Borash.
Yes.
Him as a backstage interviewer in the days of Impact, even when he was doing commentary for the first few shows, when NWA TNA launched, Jeremy Borash was great. I mean,
yes.
And you could tell he's a clear, true fan of the sport. He had a lot of fun. I just thought there's something about him that I really liked. And I also say, he's very underappreciated because he does a lot of behind the scenes work. He did a lot of behind the scenes work for Impact, and now he's, doing that with NXT, and, he's very involved in the production of the cinematic matches and stuff. So that's Jeremy Borash would be my underrated.
All right.
DDJ, I am so happy you said that, because that's where I was going to lead to, underrated, and I'll start there, because number 1 is clearly Mean Gene, but just underrated is definitely Jeremy Borash, because like I said earlier, like TNA was my stuff growing up, like Mike Tenay, Don West, Jeremy Borash, that whole team, like highly underrated back in like the heydays of TNA. We might kind of be working our way towards that. Don't have a great commentary team right now, but like David Penzer, he's doing a good job with that's who does it, right? David Penzer.
They're ring announcing, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, back in the day, definitely highly underrated team. But going back to like the number 1, Michael Cole was a good pick. I don't know how you can put him over Mean Gene. Mean Gene is iconic. Like, as Dennis broke down those moments, he added so much personality and himself into the interviews. And yes, he did have like the big stars with the big personalities to help him out. But he held his own against those stars like Hulk Hogan and everybody. Right. And then another moment I didn't hear you mention, but like when and I think it was Mean Gene, correct me if I am wrong, but like when Sid Vicious and him were talking, and then Sid just flubs this line, and then it's like, okay, we restart. It's like, no, we're live, pal.
No, that was Jim Ross, I believe.
Was that Jim Ross?
Yes, that was Jim Ross.
Okay, my bad on that one.
Right.
But yeah, yeah. I can edit that out anyways. No, I'll keep my mistakes because I am human. But yeah, overall, I think you have to go with Mean Gene for sure as the number 1 pick. Jovan did make a good case for Michael Cole, and I could see him like as a 2 or 3 for like interview skills. I mean, honestly, right now, currently, like so Tony Schiavone, he does a good job whenever he gets a chance to like do some interview segments too, commentary. But
I shout out Marvez, brother, for taking those super kicks.
I can't shout out Alex. I can't stand Alex Marvez. I'm glad they got him off commentary. That's all I'm gonna say. So, this team works better.
Real quick, Spencer, with Mean Gene, another really great moment that I don't think a lot of people talk about. This was actually late in the dying days of WCW. I believe it was Fall Brawl 2000. He was interviewing, I believe it was the the name of that group, they had all the young guys that just come in. It was like Mike Sanders, Chuck Palumbo, Sean O'Hare, Natural Born Thrillers. He was like, I think Mike Sanders was like the mouthpiece, and he was getting really mouthy. And I think like Mean, and he was trying to give Mean Gene a hard time. I think on TV, Mean Gene called him a prick or something.
Dang.
So so that's something you guys should go look up if you want a really good Mean Gene moment. But sorry, carry on.
That was rough. So that's our list of like where we fit in like all like the commentators, the ring announcers, the backstage interviewers. So kind of just to bring it home, what are your final thoughts on these three aspects in pro wrestling, and overall, like what do you see as like the future of them, and like if they're going in the right direction, I guess, because like I was alluding to, like the backstage interviewer, it's kind of getting like more robotic and kind of like a dying brand. The commentating is getting better there, and then the ring announcing too. But like I think the backstage interviewer needs a little more like pep and energy in it, not just the robotic. So just like final thoughts overall.
I actually agree with that statement. I believe like I'm not as worried as much about the ring announcing, because I honestly think the ring announcing is better overall. I think then, because everybody has, I mean, you look at WWE, you got I think it's Mike Rome on Raw, the guy on SmackDown whose name that I can't oh God, and I'm so sorry because he's Greg
Hamilton.
Thank you. Yes, there you go. And then the young lady who does the introductions, I'm sorry, I don't know her name, but the young lady that does the ring introductions for NXT, she's really good. But then AEW's got Justin Roberts. Impact has got David Penzer. Ring of Honor mentions got Bobby Cruz. I don't understand a dang word that this guy says, but the guy that they have doing the ring announcing for New Japan, like I said, I don't understand a word. Man, it's so cool to listen to his introduction and stuff. So I think ring announcing is in a really good place. I agree. I think overall, pretty much all the major organizations that I follow regularly have very, very good commentary teams. And that, so, but yeah, I believe the role of the backstage interviewer is something that I think it's different. It's not, it doesn't seem like it's as big or as pronounced as it used to be. And yeah, like robotics, a really sounding term. I really liked, and we'll probably get into this a little bit more, and you'll hear a lot about this more when our our review of War Games and stuff drops, because I think we're going to talk a little bit about, the week of WWE. I really like the interaction that Caleb Braxton had with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman on this episode of SmackDown that just aired. And I think Caleb Braxton's, out of all the people they have doing the backstage interviews for WWE right now, I think she's probably the best. And back when she was there, Renee Young was a hell of a backstage interviewer as well.
Right. Yeah, it was.
Speaking of Renee Young news, it's probably, most people probably will already know this by the time she gets out. It was just announced that her and Mr. Jon Moxley are going to be having a girl. So congratulations.
Oh,
Congrats,
man. I feel bad for the kid who has to go meet that guy.
I was going to say the same thing. And
holy crap, you make his daughter cry and he's coming at you with an armful of barbed wire.
Gonna put you in a Death Rider.
Fuck, man.
That's just my opinion. Like I said, I think commentary for the most part is really, I think ring announcing is probably, if I had to rank the three, I'd go ring announcing right now is the best. Commentary's in the middle, and the backstage interviewer is low man of the totem pole. So
all right, here we go. I'm gonna answer all your questions on the why backstage is so low and where it's at right now. Think back in the day, fellas, and we're going to go back into the great days of Mean Gene. Back in the day, there weren't a lot of in-ring promos. They were all done backstage. So you had the use of people like Mean Gene. And then as the years started going, you started getting the more in-ring promos. Promo versus promo with people in ring, promo versus the crowd. And that kind of had it to where the backstage segments no longer existed. And then when they do, they come off very horrible, very robotic, because the people back there don't know how to interact with the talent because they're not doing it at the rate that Mean Gene or Michael Cole did.
Right.
They, it's always, they'll put up, and this is the WWE, what they do. WWE will throw out there somebody fairly good looking, a female who's fairly good looking. She'll try to get a word in. It doesn't work. They just walk off on her.
Yep.
AEW has been using Marvez. He takes a super kick.
Yeah.
It's gotten to the point to where, guys, unfortunately, I think that's going to be a lost art as the backstage interviewer, because now the talent go to the ring and they talk to the fans directly. A la Dusty Rhodes' Hard Times. He looked straight into that damn camera and told you why he was having hard times. Reach out and touch me, and we can all be together. That's what wrestling is done with promos now. They put them out in front of everybody to talk their talk. And I think it's great. I like the new role. I don't like how promos are taking over a lot of the episodes, but I think it is necessary evil at times to progress a story. So I think in-ring promos killed the backstage interviewer, or at least the competent backstage interviewers that people care about. Moving on to number 2. For me, is ring announcers. I think the announcers are great. I think, just like DDJ stated, man, they do what they do. They're there to call the matches, call people in, get them out. Your winner is, this person is. They do what they do, and it's such a consistency that's never going to drop. That's never going to go away. You're always going to have that voice of your company. Now, your commentary team. The reason I put commentary team at number 1 is because of what I think could happen with the commentary team going forward. Gentlemen, I think the 3-person commentary team is here to stay. I don't think we're going to see a lot of people sticking with the 2-person formula. I think whenever the 3 was taken out there and we've seen this success, you find that harmonious balance between all 3 of them. It's magic. But that's not the reason that your commentary team is number 1 for me. Commentary is number 1 for me because of the future in commentary that we've already seen glimpses of. I'm talking about the future heel best announcer in the game. Somebody who can possibly go up there and dethrone Bobby Heenan as one of the best heels ever to do it. And that is the GOAT, Chris Jericho.
I figured that's where you were going.
Yeah, me too.
Jericho on commentary kind of gives this just excitement. He's doing it while he's still in the ring, so he's still seeing everything very fresh. Jericho's calling matches in an amazing way. He's got this weird mix of color and just smooth knowledge. So Jericho can hit you with either that stupid idiot or there goes Hurricane Rana or a Tope con Hero. But Jericho knows all of it. And the way he uses his character to influence how he calls, guys, I think that's the future. When Jericho goes full-time behind the desk at the mic, we're looking at the GOAT.
Very well could be. I can't disagree with that. He's got a long way to go to get to Heenan's level, but if anybody can do it, it's definitely him.
Yeah, he could be the GOAT inside of the ring and outside of the ring, and we know Jacob would pop for that one.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that is, I think, going to conclude it for our weekly roundtable. Probably went a little bit long, but some great information here. So thank you for sticking with us through that. But guys, after that extended weekly roundtable, I think it's time for a little bit more knowledge as we take a trip to class. All right, gentlemen, Professor Jovanni to Hotty, El Guapo to Hotty, and Professors DDJ. Now, we've been talking about greatest commentators, interviewers, ring announcers. Now, I want to talk about somebody, and I want some matches from this gentleman's career that has been involved with commentary before. But before I give my answer and who I want to hear about, gentlemen, who do you have as your pick for this week?
As soon as you said that about commentary, I think mine's not going to be the case, but this is who I had in mind.
Who is that? It looks like DDJ has Hulk Hogan. And Jovanni has the Tasmanian Devil for Taz. That would have been a good one. And I didn't think about that one, but I'm going to go with the King, Jerry The King Lawler.
Oh, that's a good one.
Very good.
Swerved you guys 2 weeks in a row. I like this.
Well, this week was a toss-up. There was so many options. We could have reviewed Michael Cole's best blunders in the ring.
Hey, if you want to talk about Michael Cole's greatest blunders, which is everything he's done with wrestling, not in commentary, but inside the ring, go ahead. But first off, I want to hear some Jerry the King Lawler match. So lead off whoever wants to start.
Jovanni, why don't you lead this one off, my man?
All right, brother. I'm going to take something that and I'm hesitant to say put Memphis wrestling on the map, because I know the territory of Memphis was already great, but this kind of gave it mainstream appeal, and I think this is where a lot of people outside of the territory started recognizing wrestling and Jerry the King Lawler, and that is going to be Jerry the King Lawler versus Andy Kaufman. That whole feud.
That was going to be mine if you didn't pick that, so well done.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I tried to read your mind.
Hey, what was it? Just basically for the reasons you gave, just about kind of the mainstream media appeal, or
yes.
For me, I'm gonna go with, and most likely, I feel like a lot of the matches I'm gonna pick are ones that he didn't win, but they've just provided so many memorable moments. His stuff was like the best. I think my favorite period of Jerry the King Lawler, like in terms of commentary, kind of ties into this first match. And that was basically anytime he did commentary during a Bret Hart match, he basically threw every insult he could at Stu and Helen Hart. And I mean, it was just like merciless. I mean, the time I think when Bret Hart was wrestling on an episode of Monday Night Raw from the Manhattan Ballroom or wherever they used to do the show from, and he was up in the balcony just like hurling insults at Stu and Helen. But I'm going to go with the Bret Hart versus Jerry the King Lawler match. I'm actually going to go with the Kiss My Foot match from 1995 in the ring. Yes. Because that whole setup the whole thing was Lawler was so confident he was going to win that match. He did not wash that foot. He stepped in horse manure. Like he had that foot all like stanky, and he had the hole in the sock, and it was just ugh. But man, he got it to him, and it's just Bret Hart won the match. Not only did he stick his foot in his mouth, but then he took Lawler's foot and stuck that in his mouth. And then just the video of Lawler just going through tubes of toothpaste and just feverishly time he's vomiting in. And then I think when he realized he was being caught, I was like, get out of here, and stuff like that. So that's going to be my first match. Is Bret Hart versus Jerry Lawler, 1995 King of the Ring Kiss My Foot match.
Such a good shoot right there.
Such a good shoot.
Oh my gosh. Well, for me, the next one, because I already did the one where I think made Mid-South, brought Jerry the King Lawler out to the masses. I'm doing the one where he finally got his due. Gentlemen, I'm going WrestleMania 27, Jerry King Lawler's debut in WrestleMania.
Okay.
The match was not great, because I think we all remember who he went against. But just the fact that the King got a WrestleMania moment, for me, that makes this one special.
Very cool. I'm going to go back I'm going to go in the way back machine. And this is actually one that I've only seen once or twice, but man, it was wild. 1981, the empty arena match versus Terry.
Oh,
I mean, I believe that was the first time a match like this had been done. And if you've ever seen Terry Funk, especially in his later days, that dude was a wild man.
Yes.
And stuff like, he was the original loose cannon. Shout out to the late Brian Pillman, but Terry Funk, Pop was the first man to really be a loose cannon. I mean, they went all over the place, his chairs, just getting thrown all over, and it's just a wild, wild match.
That was that godly. That would have been, if I didn't go WrestleMania then, I would have gone with the empty arena match. That was hellacious. I think there was even a spot where he tried to take his eye out. My next Jerry the King Lawler match. This is a hard one. Hold on.
It's time to you guys this week.
You know what? You were coming for us this week, but I've got a good one. Let's do Jerry the King Lawler after he had his heart attack. Gosh, what happened on Raw? If you don't watch Raw, if you didn't watch Raw back in that time, mid-match, Lawler has a heart attack on screen.
Yeah. I believe it was the match was the Darren Young and Titus O'Neil, the primetime players. I want to say it was them versus, was it? I think it might have been Kane. It was Kane and Daniel Bryan against the primetime players, I believe.
So Team Hell No against the primetime players. Yes. And something happens, and you see them rushing over to King. They rush him out of there. Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, was this real? And we would come to find out that, yes, the King suffered a heart attack.
Yeah.
And his return back to Raw, because you'd think that would be a lot of people's, that's, I've just had a heart attack doing this job. I'm done. Yeah. I need to hang it up. No. When he came back, he had his heartfelt moment in the ring. That gets my next spot. Not a match, but the return from the heart attack.
Much respect to that one.
So this one I got here, it actually, we Jovanni talked about Jerry the King Lawler versus Michael Cole from WrestleMania 27. The match that I'm actually going to talk about actually was kind of like, I believe, the setup for that match, and that was about a month or so before. I believe it was one of the only times he actually wrestled for the WWE title. And that was against The Miz. I believe it was I think it was Elimination Chamber, whatever the pay-per-view was for WrestleMania. I want to say it was Elimination Chamber. I mean, there were times where I honestly thought, wow, like maybe he's going to do it, and stuff. So I think that's a very, very underrated match. And it's something that, like I said, it just, I'm glad, even though he didn't win the title, it was nice to see to at least give him that chance, because at the time we all thought that may have been his only way to WrestleMania, was winning the WWE Championship. And I believe Michael Cole actually cost him that match.
Yep.
And which led into the match, the WrestleMania Classic match that Jovanni was talking about a little earlier.
Let's see. Let me see if I have another one.
I got one more.
Go ahead. I'm trying to think.
Right. So this match that I'm about to talk about isn't necessarily a match that that's really a highlight of Jerry Lawler's career for what he did in the ring, but it's basically what he did out of the ring and under the ring. I'm going to give to you the 1996 Royal Rumble match. And the reason why I'm going with that is because that was Jerry Lawler at his heelish best. I believe he was in the match. Jake the Snake Roberts had just come out, and he brought the snake out, and he cleared out everyone except Lawler, who was beating on someone, and Lawler had his back turned. Next thing you know, Jake throws the snake on him. Lawler's freaking out. Everybody clears the ring. And then, for a minute, and then while they get the snake corralled in the bag and stuff, and after that, everybody's, back in the ring. And after a while, you notice, where's the king? And then somewhere through the match, like the camera picks up Jerry the King Lawler poking his head from out of the ring, underneath the ring, kind of looking around, and he crawls back in there. He hid under that ring for an ungodly amount of time. I believe it was until Shawn Michaels came out in that match. Like, I want to say it was like number 17, number 18, something like that, and stuff. But man, that was just, I think, the first time anyone ever really exploited that rule in a Battle Royal / Royal Rumble match. And I mean, it was a move of genius because, he lasted so long in that. So yeah, guys, if you want to see Jerry Lawler at his heelish best, go watch the 1996 Royal Rumble match.
So good. My last one, and I can't believe I almost forgot this one. They would have kicked me out of Texas. But, gentlemen, I'm going Mid-South Wrestling.
Ooh.
Oh, very, very, very young Jerry the King Lawler going against Texas Dirt from Dirt, Texas, Dirty Dutch Mantel in a barbed wire match.
Ooh.
If you're from Texas and you like Texas Dirt, you've seen this match.
Why are you speaking with a Texas accent all of a sudden?
You have to when you talk about Dirty Dutch Mantel, buddy.
Okay,
especially when you're referring to him.
All of a sudden, just comes out of nowhere, like an RKO.
From out of nowhere. But yeah, when you're talking about Texas Dirt, you got to put a little stank on it, DDJ.
Okay, put that stank on.
But for you guys for y'all that have got YouTube, please go out there and find Texas Dirt from Dirt, Texas, Dirty Dutch Mantel, and Jerry the King Lawler. Circa 1982.
Wow.
Yeehaw, buddy.
Yippee-ki-yay, mother. Whoops.
How about them Cowboys?
Oh, God. Well, your Cowboys suck.
Spencer, all the teams you root for suck. My Bears suck, so.
All of our teams suck.
Hey, Titans are doing pretty good. And 49ers and whatever team I decide to rep.
I'm die hard, baby. I'll die with that blue and silver.
Oh, God help you.
You're a fan.
All right. But enough of the football talk. Guys, thank you. Great matches. I know I kind of gave you a little bit of a curveball here with this one. I know. Oh, yeah. You guys never said you wanted to know, so I don't let you know. I don't even know what I'm doing half the time. It just comes out of my head. Wow. Shots fired late in the junkyard.
Go ahead and say it. I know you're thinking it. Just go ahead and say it.
I wasn't thinking it. I thought you were doing great.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to let you slide because we'll save that for another time when you're really being a dick. But yeah.
Oh, you're going to get doubled up next time. Double up.
Oh my God.
Oh, screw it. Retribution.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, I gotta give the people what they want.
It's bad that he's wanting it now.
And what they're wanting for us to do is to wrap it up. So for myself, Spencer, number 11, DDJ and Jovanni to Hotty, we have been the Junkyard. Make sure you guys are following our social media accounts on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, PW_junkies. Go subscribe or go join the Facebook group. The link is in the description. I don't feel like saying all that. Make sure, like I said earlier in the podcast, go check out all our bonus episodes, the AEW Paradigm Shift episode, our NXT War Games prediction episode, and our NXT War Games review, not Survivor Series like I said the first time, so my bad.
That's on there too.
Yeah, that is on there too, so check out all that good shoot. But then you can follow me on my personal Twitter account at scantor11. I know these guys' socials, but go ahead and plug yourself.
I'm at Dennis W. Jr. on Twitter, and then you can find me on Facebook at Dennis Day Jr.
I am on Twitter at Giovanni2Hotty, and you can find me in the Pro Wrestling Junkies Facebook page as Jovan Menacho.
All right. And before we leave, the first one will already have happened with Vicky Guerrero, our virtual markout last night. But make sure you guys check out our virtual markout with all ego Ethan Page tonight.
Karate Man.
The Karate Man at 7 o'clock in the Pro Wrestling Junkies Facebook group. That's 7 Eastern. So we hope to see you guys there. Thank you again for checking out this edition of the Junkyard. Again, make sure you guys leave a 5-star review, comment on Apple Podcasts. We really greatly appreciate that. But other than that, don't forget, if you're watching the Junkyard and you take a selfie, make sure you take a junk selfie and then hashtag junk selfies. I don't think we've seen any yet, but if they do, we'll be sure to broadcast them here on the Junkyard.
We'll make you famous.
Yeah, we'll make you famous for our 10 viewers or whatever. But hey, it doesn't matter about the views. We do it for the people. But guys, thank you again for joining.
We do it for you guys.
Absolutely. So thank you everybody for joining us for this edition of the Junkyard. Until next time, Junkies out.